This is the show where I review idents from past and present on television, TV idents. This week we're headed all the way to 1978 to review the London Weekend Television, or LWT for short, idents. But first, before we go any further, without a doubt, here is the 1978 London Weekend Television ident. Enjoy! What a smashing ident that was. Now let's get into our detailed review of it. So, London Weekend Television was a subsidiary, it was a part of what is now known as ITV. And you can tell already when you look at the ident, you can tell that it screams London. So, whereas Thames Television has the assets of the Thames, the London Weekend Television, as you can see here, as you can see, we have the Union Jack colours. We have our red, white and blue. So it's 1978 and this is at the height of technology coming in and all these beautiful effects that are taking place. So you can see that the colour scheme is spot on for London, but when you look further into it and you see that it starts off curved, and I think that sort of enhances the ident, in my opinion, is the way that it comes down into a curve and then creates the formula of each individual letter. And I think that as a whole, that sort of represents what an ident that represents London needs to be. So when you have, for example, when you have a flag, you want to make sure that that flag represents the country, and London is the capital of the United Kingdom, so having the LWT in that colour style works really well. And I think that it all merging together, the L comes down, merges into the W, merges here, and then you watch them separate very slowly, and that works really well. And then when you listen to the music, do do do, and you can hear that it's like, oh, ooh, ah, and you get excited because you think to yourself, that's London Weekend Television. It's a recognisable tune, and it helps you to remember what you're watching. So I know that as years gone by, post 1978 and into the realm of where we have archive TV channels, and what I mean by that is that TV channels that show programmes that the main competitors won't be showing anymore, apart from BBC4, that does show classic programmes, but that's mainly from the BBC. So channels show a lot of, like, other channels show a lot of ITV stuff, because not ITV, apart from ITV 3 or 4 maybe, doesn't really show much archived content, so a lot of it's left down to these amazing channels. And so when you watch these programs, a lot of people, you can see when the channels are trying to share them out online, going, could you please keep the LWTI ident in it, or can you keep the Thames Television or the Yorkshire or Anglia, any of them? And sometimes when aware they think it's appropriate, they try to. So you always watch it and it reminds you of that era, and that's what an ident should do. It should be long lasting, in a sense of it will not die out in your love of it, but it'll remind you of childhood, it'll remind you of all this, but at the time it'll be cutting edge, it'll be what you want from a ident at that time, and it'll remind you of how life is at that time, and then you'll have all these memories attached to that, because it's not just one program, it's multiple. So you'll have then memories attached to that one thing. So when you hear it again years later, you're like, oh, I remember when I was 8 and I was watching blah and blah, and it was that. And that's what this ident captures really well, even though it's simple in the sense of it's short, it's quick, it doesn't go on for long. You are watching it going, even though it's 30 seconds or so, you're going, yes, I'll be on board with it. Well, it's about 32 seconds to be precise, but when you look at it going, that is beautiful. And it's one of those ones where, as a fan of Idents, like myself, you look at it going, that's simple, but that must be easy to recreate with modern technology. And that inspires a new generation of ident makers, because these idents are readily available to get access to in the world. So you can easily look at it going, that's what we should do in the future, because idents are a key element that makes the channel. So every channel, no matter what content the channel on TV produces, right, they have an ident. Sometimes some channels don't have continuity announcers, underneath it, as some channels do. So sometimes you're just watching the ident in itself and then going, oh, well, that's really good because that reminds me of when I hear that, I know I'm watching that channel. And sometimes when you hear the continuity announcer, you know that when you hear that voice with that visual, it pieces it together. But London Weekend Television as a whole, I liked how when you look at it on a loop, to demonstrate some points, when you look at it on a loop like I am, you can see the blockiness of each individual letter. So as it comes down, you see that it merges together, and each segment is blockier than the last. And really, that really helps, because if you've got a black void, which in my opinion isn't always a good choice, it helps to show that the colours are bright, that they're vivid, and that the letters are clearly readable, and then the text underneath does its job that it needs to do, but it is seeable and readable from a distance. So no matter if you've got poor eyesight or you've got really good eyesight, you can still see that makes out the letters because of its bulkiness and because of how long, how long of a distance you can be to see it. And I think that overall, it works really well. I personally, and I'll be honest with you, love idents where you have a shortened name, but then you also put a real name. For the BBC, for example, you wouldn't really write British Broadcasting Corporation or British Broadcasting Company. You wouldn't write that underneath because that would be too blocky because they've got the squares. But for London Weekend Television, I think it works really well because they've got the space, they've got the stuff coming that way. They haven't got a lot of everything else happening. So having that underneath really just seals the deal at the end. It's only there for a few seconds, but it's at the end. So you're like, ooh. Hey! And it's really good and really exciting and makes you over the moon that you're watching this program. And I think the idents, LWT has always been, in my personal opinion, in the top 10 best ITV idents, because I've got favourite selection of idents for selection of channels, but I think from the number one in terms of television, obviously, and then it comes down from that, so LWT is probably like third, fourth in the list, but overall, I think that I think it is amazing. I think the ident works really well, and you really, when you really think about it and you really look into it, you see details, and you see that the designers have well crafted it, because you wouldn't get the perfect colour blend. And what it's done over the years, when quality of things like 4K, 8K, HD, and all this came into power, you still watch that and you can still see each individual detail. You can still see it as crisp. You can do whatever you like to stop all the dust and scratch and some other aspects of it, but at the heart, it still stands up to today's standards of idents, because as a whole, in British society and in society in general, things move on, and people remember the past and love the past, but things move on, and it's not always positive when things move on. Sometimes they bring TV shows back and they don't work now, or they bring back an old ident and it doesn't work. But no matter what happens, LWT, London Weekend Television, will always have a cracking ident from 1978, and I think 1978's idents are the most well-known idents out the pack of idents that LWT did. I think 1978 is the most memorable, the most unforgettable, and the most incredible ident you or I will ever know. So, there we have it. That is a glorious episode of For the Love of Idents. I'll see you next time for more Love of Idents. Bye-bye!